What's up, you sexy freaks? I'm gonna bring you guys more mix game this week than your grandma with that cookie dough batter recipe.
You can't touch this.
All right, let's get into some background vocals, some oohs, and how to give dimension to these stacks. Lock in, Radium mix series. Let's get into it. All right, first things first, housekeeping. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me to grow the channel. I give out free game. I've put up over 600 videos on this YouTube channel, and I just appreciate a share if you get something out of this. Like on the video, maybe a nice comment or a question. Anything you can do to kind of support the channel and help us out, because I'm trying to help you out, right? So let's get into some mix game here. I got this track that has vocal stacks on it. Heather Taylor is the artist. I got oohs, and these oohs, I wanted to show you guys how I make these oohs, or any background like ooh or ah or yeah or anything like that, right? Any background vocals, how do you get them to sound different and unique? First things first, she's got one of these guys, I got one of these guys. Slate microphone. It models all the classic microphones, right? We got tube microphones, classic U47s, C800s, all that stuff. Really cool tool to be working with someone remotely, because you can use the mix rack and model the different microphones after they've taken their takes. So that's what I've done. I'm gonna go to the mixer and I'm going to, first of all, disable all the plugins and all the things I've done to these vocal oohs. And then I'm going to take you through exactly why I did what I did and what I'm doing with them, okay? So here's the track with the oohs, very, very raw. All right, so we got some oohs in there. Some ooh and some ooh. 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 Pretty cool, but they sound really raw. First thing I do when I'm going in is I try to figure out what's going on with the stack. So this is a high, this is a mid, and this is a low vocal that comes in here. What I have here is I'm panning the high one 30-30, mid is going a little wider, 51-51. You could choose to do this however you like. Maybe you want your high ones a little bit wider and you want your mid ones a little closer in. And I typically have a mid center vocal as well. So that's a third take right there. And then the lows for my stack, I go 15-15, 20-20. Try to keep the lows kind of more in the center, just the way I hear low end, and I think most people hear it that way. So the first thing I do is I go, hey, let's turn on EQ to high pass everything that we don't need, because there's nothing down here on a female vocal that I want, especially under like 200 hertz, right? Even 300 hertz. Like I'll go really high on my high pass filter. Get rid of the junk. That way, when you hit the next step, you're not processing a bunch of junk. You're processing the purity of the signal. That's my first tip. Second tip, go through the microphones. If you're using a Slate mic or you're using a Townsend or any sort of like modeled microphone, or you have a mic collection of more than one microphone, you should always track your vocals, your stacks. If you're gonna do a high and then a mid and then a low and then you wanna track those with different mics, because different mics give you different timbres. They give you different textures. So that's what I'm doing. On this, I have the C800 because it has a nice little wispy, it has that air in it, okay? That's part of the capsule. It's also part of the EQ of the capsule and the design of the microphone. And then I'm going to a FG73, and I have this compressor and the revival turned off, not using them, okay? So once I turn this stuff on, I have that on both the left and the right high. Ooh. Starts to get a little more silky, starts to get a little more controlled, a little more defined. So I'll just kind of bypass that in and out for you. Right, just a little bit more in your face. It kind of pops out. It kind of has 3 dimensions, if you will. Okay, so the second thing I'm gonna do is I take my mid mics. I'm gonna pop these into the mix, and they're panned a little harder. Same thing. First thing I do is high pass, right? Get rid of any gunk or junk down here. That's all I'm using. I'm not using like a bunch of EQ curves. Get rid of the resonant crazy. Like, get the hell out of here with that shit. Y'all need to calm down with all your EQ curve like tricks or whatever. Turn on your virtual mix. And for this one, I'm doing the FG49 because the 49 has a very beautiful three-dimensional mid-range. And I don't need a whole lot of top in something going, ooh. Why would I want a sizzle on ooh? I want a sizzle on ee, or like a ha, breathy sort of thing. Cool, leave the sizzle. But when I'm going ooh, I want like punch and definition in the mid-range. Now, one thing you can hear that is actually really cool, and I wish both the left and the right mid-range vocal had it in there, is that little bit of distortion. It's like, it's kind of breaking a little bit, which makes it sound more Motown to me, and that's the sound I'm going for. But because the left vocal doesn't have it, I need to pop that into the left vocal to match it up. So I'm going to go to my virtual mix. I'm going to drive this preamp a little bit more, and I'm going to drive the intensity of the 49 on the left side, so I can hopefully get a little bit of that breakup as well. Now, when you do that, you obviously need to kind of gain this down and trim it down. But I'm just acting like these are how I track the vocals. That's the first step of this. Getting a little bit closer, but I want to balance those out. Now let's hear the low, or yeah, I got a middle mic here. So this is another mid, which is going to kind of, define that middle again. Right, so now we have the three, the mid, left, right, and the center. Awesome. Now let's pop in these lows. What I got here, I just sweeped out. I'm just moving the filter down a little bit so I can let that low in through because it's a lower vocal. And on the virtual mix rack, we're choosing a different mic again and a different preamp. So again, this stuff is off for now. We don't have this on. We have a C12, which is awesome. AKG C12, amazing classic mic, has a beautiful top end, has a very, very nice warm body, okay? But it's not boomy. So it's gonna help kind of EQ curve this so it doesn't get boomy and weird, okay? And then I got this FG 76 preamp, which is very warm, and it's like what they would use in Motown records, really. So hopefully what you're noticing is every vocal has its own timbre now and a little bit more of its place in space. And it also, like, because of the harmonics of these different microphones and preamps, it starts to gel these things together. It starts to, like, add the fuzz that's hugging. Without them and without the EQs, it feels sterile. It feels kind of generic, if you will. So I'm going to take them out and in and just listen to the A-B. No EQ, sweeping out the bullshit, and no virtual mix with the microphones and the preamps. That's all I've done. Now, besides the obvious gain that's happening when I pop them in, you're going to notice that, like, it starts to feel like one thing rather than like this, like, here's all these like sterile little vocals kind of doing something. So now let's tie it together even more. I know everybody wants, like, throw it through reverb, put it in reverb, man. EQ the crap out of it, put a bunch of compression on it. That's how you do it. You got to stop, pump the brakes, right? Microphones have EQ. Microphones, these microphones that we're modeling have tubes. They also have transformers. They have a lot of color. The preamps have tubes, have transformers. The Carnhill transformers in the 1073s. The 73 FG73 also has a fat transformer in it. The microphones themselves, C800 has a tube in it. There's a lot of color going on already. There's harmonic saturation, there's EQ curves, there's everything, right? There's compression naturally from the signal passing through a transformer or a tube. A tube is going to compress the signal. So you don't need to always throw a compressor, EQ, start messing around with all that shit. Try to get your EQ and your textures and harmonics and all your curves out of your microphones. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm bussing to bus 17, which is going to give all my background vocals. There's a Fairchild. It's got so many tubes in it. It's going to add harmonic no matter what you do, even if you don't compress at all. I'm very, very lightly compressing, and I'm driving the input a little bit, which is going to give more color. It's going to give more depth, more 3 dimensions because of the harmonic saturation. Okay, so it ties it together even more because now all of that complex information from all the group vocals is hitting this tube, drive, a little bit of compression, squeezing together. It starts to just like glue it and gel it together, right? And it starts to feel like one thing rather than a bunch of different, takes. We want it to sound like we had a group vocal, like group vocals, like in a room being mic'd up, like, ooh, that's the idea. So how do we do that even further? Let's throw it into a room. You can also just use a room reverb. Like you could use a room verb from like Valhalla. You could use a built-in reverb from Logic to do this. Mess around with the pre-delay. That's where you're going to get the room sound. I'm using this guy, which is the MKH20 in Omni. You can also use a C12 in Omni. You could do the U67 in Omni, which is very classic sound. And we're just going to blend this in. So I'm going to kind of use this as a reverb, kind of like remiking the whole thing. All right. So that's what we're doing. Super effective way of taking vocals or anything, guitars, synths, whatever, and tucking them back without them feeling like they're washed out in reverb, right? This is giving us a lot of dimension. So to reiterate and to go through this again, I'm going to bypass everything I've done so you guys can hear where we were and where we are now. But let's first play this in the mix and see if it works. Because maybe it doesn't. Maybe it sounds like crap. So starting to really get out of the way of the lead vocal, which is awesome. We're starting to have a different room, like a feel to the vocals, which is awesome. Let's bypass it all out and just give you guys a B of everything. More dimension, more texture, more width, a little bit more depth as well. And that's kind of my starting point. I want it to sound like that's how I track the vocals. I had spot mics on the single vocals with different mics doing the highs, doing the mids, doing the lows, and then I reamped a beautiful room like Ocean Way that just sounded good, and that's what I have. And I tracked it through those microphones and through that gear. And now I can start my mix. That's kind of how I think as an engineer. It's a little bit old school feel and thinking, but I think it gets you a lot further because I could commit all those channels and all those tracks and then start doing my mix. I can start to layer in new vocals, new passes of vocals. I can add more reverb, more, Valhalla, a little longer tail, delay, slap delay, whatever. I can do all sorts of stuff. But I just know that first pass, that's intentionally what I really wanted, was a group of vocals in a room tracking something that sounded very Motown, warm, fat, just beautiful and gooey. So if you guys like this kind of stuff, definitely subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it. All right. I'm going to drop some links in the description as well for more game. I got master classes. I teach a ton of this stuff in depth. So if you want to go like very detailed with editing vocals, mixing, mastering, like going through the whole process with me in video modules, that's the place to do it. All right. I'll see you next time. Mix Series, Radium Records. I'm out of here. Peace.